A candidate that applies and isn't referred and goes through the regular interview process is going to be a regular candidate until they are shown or they show that they separate themselves from the pack.
Welcome to Hired Not Fired by The Real Me. We help turn your human skills into superpowers, the skills AI can't replace, so you get noticed, get interviews, and get hired. Hey there, welcome to our new episode of Hired Not Fired. And I am bringing back Nick Smith to talk more about how to stand out, ace an interview, and get an offer at some of the most highly competitive companies out there. Nick is a recruiting talent acquisition professional with nearly a decade of experience hiring new grads, individual contributors, and executive technical talent at companies like Meta, formerly known as Facebook, Lucid Motors, Twitch, and Prime Video, where he's made immediate impacts in tough to fill verticals, developed entire interview architecture for new teams, and everything in between. Welcome back, Nick.
Hey, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure, Deb.
We've had some great discussions about getting noticed, getting to the interview, what to do in the interview. Now, I've heard you say that candidates actually have more leverage than they realize. So I'd like to dig in a little bit to that today. What do you think?
I'd love to. Let's go.
Okay. Well, let's start with questions. Candidates usually get just a couple of minutes to ask questions at the end of an interview, right? Why
Yeah.
do those questions matter so much to recruiters
Yeah.
and hiring managers?
It matters because it gives us a glimpse into what you care about. And, I think I may have mentioned in a previous episode, is, something similar. And I think the idea that it's not going to get you the job, but it will separate you if there is a discussion being had behind the scenes between you and another candidate, right? Like that would be something to, I don't know, this candidate A and candidate B, they both have this amount of experience. They both do this, they both do that. But, candidate A, I really got the impression through their questions that they're not afraid of, tackling one of our big projects. They even asked me about it. And, I'm really excited to work with somebody like that. The other candidate was asking me about lunch, right? I think there are different ways to go about asking these questions at the end. And as a candidate, you give yourself an opportunity to A, avoid a self-inflicted wound, and B, give yourself another positive signal in their eyes. There's a ton of different types of questions, and I'm happy to go into like I guess a couple examples if you want me to share them.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Um, awesome. So I think some really good common questions are things like, if I were to start this job in a month, what would be some helpful resources or knowledge bases that you think I should become familiar with prior to starting so that I have a leg up and have, I guess, less of a ramp when I start? Um, I would say a question like if I started tomorrow and a year from now we were writing my review, what would I have had to accomplish in order to have exceeded the expectations you have for me? And I could kind of go into a few more, but just those two kind of stand out. I think the second one shows it's not it's not that you're even asking about how to meet expectations, right? It's
Mm.
about how to exceed them. I think you're not just raising your hand going, "I work hard, I promise," right? Like that means nothing. And so I think the question shows more ownership. I think the question shows more desire to act and be responsible for your own performance. It also shows that you don't want to just be middle of the pack. And for what
Mhm.
it's worth, at the companies I have been so lucky to work at, there really isn't somebody that I would call middle of the pack. Most people are really good at what they do there. But eventually, even averages happen at the top. And
Mhm.
so, actually, don't quote me on that if any of my data science candidates are listening. I don't know if that actually makes sense from a mathematical perspective, but in my head,
Yes,
it
no,
made sense. In my head, it makes
to
sense.
me too.
But okay, good. But just in general, I think showing, not telling, right? And I work hard. I have good written and verbal communication skills is not as powerful as I can't wait to make an impact. What's the most difficult thing that you would want me to work on right now? Right? Like there are two completely different energies. And I
Mhm.
think that is one of those things that creates a subliminal shift in an interviewer's mind that makes somebody go, oh, they can do it here. They really can.
Mhm. Well, those are some great examples. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to shift a little bit to,
Yeah.
that question when employers ask, "So, what are you looking for?"
Ah,
What's actually happening behind the scenes in that question?
can we save money? Can we save money? I mean, not all the time, right? I joke, but at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, a company is a profit machine. And I mean, I'm not involved in these conversations at that level, right? I'm not in the C-suite, but I have to imagine if you can hire somebody for cheaper, that's probably better. Um, I would say that there is a shift candidates can make to give them a little bit of leverage. And honestly, it's so small, but it changes everything. And I can share it
Please
if you'd
do.
like. But yeah, so I mean, I think candidates, you mentioned in the beginning, candidates have more leverage than they think. Um, at certain stages, or depending on how you're found,
Mhm.
right? A candidate that applies and isn't referred and goes through the regular interview process is going to be a regular candidate until they are shown or they show that they separate themselves from the pack. A referral is probably going to have a slightly different process, right? You probably are going to make sure that somebody sees the referral. It's not the same everywhere, but referrals definitely are treated with incredible importance because there's existing relationships. If you're found, if a recruiter finds you, if they source you, right, you inherently have more leverage, right? Like a recruiter typically isn't going to reach out to you in the first message and be like, hey, why would you want to work for my company? At least I would hope that they don't do that. Typically, they're courting you,
Yeah.
right? And so that's a dynamic to be aware of as well. But in a general sense, if somebody asks you what you're looking for, saying I'm looking for roles between X and Y is a fine approach. I think it's not really giving yourself a self-inflicted wound, but you can do better. And I think it's a very small shift. And all I tell my friends and whatnot, if they ever ask me for advice, is I'm currently being considered for roles between X and Y. And immediately your recruiter or whoever you're talking to is going to say, okay, well, somebody has validated their worth, right? It's not just what they believe it to be,
Mhm.
and they likely have other opportunities and other options. So you likely have set the framework or the groundwork for a conversation later in the process where you can negotiate maybe a little bit more aggressively. And I use aggressively a little bit delicately because I don't think necessarily you want to just bull your way through a china shop.
Right.
But the idea is, yeah, you set yourself up for a really honest conversation at the end where you're saying, yeah, remember I was being considered for a couple of these roles. Well, one of them is actually ending and I'm anticipating an offer, or I do have an offer in hand. And
Mhm.
if it's reflected in truth, then you have all the ability to walk away from a number.
Mhm. Well, that's great advice that I don't think people often hear. So thank you for
Yeah,
that.
of
Now,
course.
if if candidates could make one mindset shift to stop giving away leverage, this without becoming entitled or
Right.
performative, what would you want them to understand?
It's hard, but don't be desperate. It's hard. It's very hard. I have been desperate as a candidate. Um, and I think one of the signs is like doubling up on an email within a 24-hour period. Um,
Classic newbie
I,
mistake.
yeah, I mean, or just somebody who definitely needs a job and maybe this is their only interview. And as much as a recruiter, I want everybody to win. I do, but it can't happen, right? Like I want to fill my role and I want to fill it with the best candidate. I recognize that not everybody is gonna win, and you have to look at it the same way as a candidate. Like you're not gonna work for every company you interview for, right? And so I think the idea of confidence and dropping desperation is going to create for lack of a better word, an aura about you where you don't give off like, oh, I can lowball them, or I don't have to be the best version of myself for them. And that shouldn't happen, but it does.
Well, that's wonderful advice, and I you have given so much for job seekers to think about, and I am sure that if they listen to these episodes again and again, take notes, and the other episodes, because there's so much gold out there, it'll make their job search more successful. So thank you again, Nick, and
Yeah, no,
best of
my
luck to all
pleasure.
the job seekers out there.
Absolutely. Best of luck to all of them. And thanks for creating a platform that is really aimed at getting this information out there. I think that as a recruiter, I understand what I know, but it's what I know. It's what I've been doing. And not everybody knows these things. And I think you have created a wonderful platform to give people this information. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.